Seoul, South Korea. Evening rush hour hums through Myeongdong. Neon signs flicker, music thunders from nearby cafes, and the smell of grilled meat tangles with rain-soaked air. The rain had started suddenly, a light drizzle turning into a full downpour. Umbrellas blossom like flowers on the street, but in the corner of a narrow lane, one bright red canopy refused to close. Underneath it, Nicky Carter stood over a sizzling grill, her apron flecked with sesame oil and smoke, curls tucked under a scarf, eyes fierce as firelight. "Don't worry, y'all. Ain't no rain strong enough to wash away this flavor." Her laugh burst through the drizzle. A few customers chuckled, huddled under umbrellas, mesmerized by the American woman commanding the street like she owned it. "One bulgogi bowl deluxe for Minjun. Add extra spice, sugar pie? Yes, please. You got it, baby." Nicky slid the dish across with practiced grace, steam rising like a halo around her. She wiped her brow, humming an old gospel tune her father loved. Across the street, a black car pulled up. Silent, sleek, the kind that didn't belong in alleys like this. From it stepped Han Sang-ook. Tall, immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit, tie sharp as a blade. Even in the mist, he looked untouched, his umbrella perfectly aligned, shoes unblemished. He scanned the street. A disused row of stalls. The area was scheduled for redevelopment. His company, HSG Group, planned to replace these vendors with glass storefronts and designer cafes. But one stall still thrived, and the smell, smoky, sweet, hypnotic, caught him off guard. "CEO Han," his assistant murmured beside him. "We can proceed with demolition next week." Except that one. "The foreigner doesn't have a listed permit. Handle it quietly," he said, already distracted by the sound of her laughter. A flash of lightning. A delivery scooter sped through the puddles, straight toward Nicky's stall. She jumped back. The scooter splashed mud and rainwater all over her white sneakers. And worse, a passing black car got caught in the same wave, spraying her stall's counter. Her voice rang out, "Hey, watch where you're going." The scooter disappeared, but she turned to the car, the driver already stepping out. "Oh, no, you didn't," she muttered. Her eyes locked onto Sang-ook's. He just closed his umbrella and was looking at the damage. Their gazes met and collided. "You just ruined my table, mister." "Your table?" His tone was smooth, detached. "It's a street bench. Street bench or not, I clean that thing every morning with vinegar and prayer." A few bystanders snickered. Sang-ook blinked, unused to being challenged by anyone, let alone a stranger selling meat in an apron with cartoon pigs on it. "If you're going to park that luxury tank, at least don't baptize my customers." "I'll have my driver handle the cleaning," he replied coolly. "Send me the cost." "Oh, I'll do better than that." She grabbed a napkin, scribbled something on it, and handed it over. "My price? You buy a plate, then we'll call it even." He stared at the napkin. Bulgogi bowl. 12,001. "You're charging me to eat your apology?" "No," she said with a grin. "I'm charging you for interrupting a masterpiece." Sang-ook stood there for a long moment. Her confidence amused him. Unnervingly so. He'd been surrounded by women in designer dresses, power brokers, models. None of them spoke to him like this woman with sesame oil on her wrist. "Fine," he said. "One order." Nicky turned to the grill, muttering under her breath. Men in suits always talk like they own the air. What was that? Nothing. Just saying you're about to eat the best thing that's ever happened to your life, that's all. The sizzling filled the silence. Meat caramelizing, garlic and soy blending in the steam. Sang-ook found himself watching her move. Quick, graceful, almost joyful. When she slid the bowl toward him, the rain had slowed. He picked up the chopsticks she handed him, noting the small handwritten note on the napkin. Soul and soul, made with heart. He took a bite and froze. The taste hit him. Rich, layered, smoky, yet somehow bright. A whisper of Southern BBQ and Korean soul. You made this? Who else you think did? The Sesame Fairy? He almost smiled. Almost. It's good. Good? She raised a brow. That's it? Good is how you describe traffic, not bulgogi this divine. He set his chopsticks down, meeting her eyes. I don't use superlatives easily. Well, she said, folding her arms, maybe that's your problem. A spark of laughter rippled through the customers. Sang-ook exhaled slowly, pushing the bowl back. Send me the invoice. I'll pay extra for the cleaning. Forget the money, Mr. Stoneface. Just tell people Soul and Soul is worth the hype. He didn't answer, but his gaze lingered on her longer than he meant to. Later that night, his assistant followed him into the car. Sir, should we issue an eviction notice for the woman's stall? Sang-ook didn't answer immediately. Not yet. Why not? She makes good food. But the land, I said not yet. As the car pulled away, Nicky waved to her last customers, unaware that the man who'd eaten her bulgogi was the same CEO planning to tear her world down. The next morning, headlines flood the HSG group's internal chat. Han Sang-ook personally inspected Myeongdong food stalls last night. CEO delays demolition of Block 7. Reasons undisclosed. In her stall, Nicky taped a photo of her father on the wall and whispered, You see that, Daddy? Even the suit crowd can't resist our flavor. Across town, Sang-ook sat in his penthouse office, staring at the same napkin she'd handed him. Soul and soul, made with heart. A rare smile touched his lips. Heart, he murmured. That's the dangerous ingredient. Morning in Seoul. Rain had washed the streets clean, but the gossip left behind was dirtier than ever. At Soul and Soul, Nicky Carter balanced a tray of marinated beef with one hand and scrolled through her phone with the other. A group of nearby vendors were whispering, their eyes darting toward her. You didn't know? One of them said. That guy last night? The tall one? That's Han Sang-ook. The Han Sang-ook. Who? Nicky frowned. The CEO of HSG Group. The one buying out this whole street. The tray clattered to the counter. The what now? She turned her phone screen, typed his name, and froze. There he was. The same man she'd called Mr. Stoneface. Now pictured in glossy magazines beside headlines like Han Sang-ook, Korea's most ruthless visionary. No woman, no scandal, no mercy. Her jaw clenched. The same man who'd smiled at her food was the one quietly planning to erase her life's work. Oh no. He did not eat my bulgogi and lie to me. She slammed the lid of her sauce jar shut, muttering, If he comes back, I'm serving him extra chili and no napkin. HSG Group Headquarters. A polished glass tower pierced the sky, gleaming like ambition itself. Inside the boardroom, executives lined the table. Men in dark suits, women with clipped tones. Sang-ook sat at the head, expression unreadable. Mr. Han, said Director Choi, sliding a file across, our redevelopment proposal for Myeongdong is ready. All vendors cleared, except one. Soul and Soul. Why? A foreign street seller. No official permit. Should we proceed with demolition? Silence. Sang-ook's fingers drummed against the file. He saw her face again in his mind. Fiery, laughing, unapologetically alive. No, he said at last. Put a hold on that. The board exchanged confused looks. Sir, issue an inspection notice, not demolition. Tell the department it's under review. But the investors, leave it. Director Choi narrowed his eyes. Is there a particular reason you're protecting this vendor? Sang-ook's jaw tightened. No, just due diligence. Later. That day, Myeongdong Alley. Nicky stood at her stall, hands on hips, glaring at the three officials measuring the space with tape. The inspection notice hung crookedly on her canopy. Pending property evaluation. HSG Group. You've got to be kidding me, she shouted. He really sent his people? He couldn't even say it to my face? Her assistant, Hee-jin, whispered nervously, Uni, maybe it's just a routine check. Routine my foot. This is sabotage in a suit. As the inspectors left, Nicky slammed her spatula down and pointed toward the empty street. Fine, let him come. Let Mr. CEO see how I season Betrayal. That night. The crowd had thinned, but the alley glowed softly under hanging lanterns. Nicky was closing up when she heard the sound of polished shoes approaching. She didn't even turn. We're closed. I'm not here for food, came that low, calm voice. Oh, look who it is. The man of mystery, or should I say, the man of demolition. He paused, rain misting his hair. You found out. You think? She snapped. You walked in here, ate my food, complimented my grill, and didn't mention you're the man trying to bulldoze my dream? It wasn't relevant. Wasn't relevant? That's like a fox telling a chicken, don't worry about my diet. A flicker of guilt crossed his face, quickly buried under control. I was curious, he said. About what? The flavor of hope before you tear it down? Her voice trembled. Not from fear, but fury. You people with your suits and your silence, you think we don't matter. But this place? This stall fed people when no one else would. I may not have an office view, but I've got purpose. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Her words hit harder than he expected. You're not being evicted, he said finally. Not yet. Oh, how generous. I ordered an inspection, not demolition. Congratulations on your compassion, Mr. CEO. He sighed softly. You're not easy to talk to. You're not easy to trust. Beat of silence. Rain trickled between them. The tension simmered like the grill she turned off. Finally, she crossed her arms. So what are you doing here, really? Research. Research? I'm evaluating the value of independent vendors. Oh, please. You mean you're spying on your competition? No, he said quietly. I'm trying to understand why people line up for you when they could walk 5 blocks to a 5-star restaurant. That silenced her for half a second. Because, she said slowly, food tastes better when the person cooking actually cares who's eating. His expression softened. Just for a heartbeat. Then maybe I'll need a second serving. For research. She rolled her eyes but handed him a bowl. Fine. But this time, you pay double. Foreigner's tax. I'm Korean. And rich. Same difference. He almost laughed. Almost. Nicky flipped meat, teasing him between orders. Sang-ook sits on a low plastic stool, clearly uncomfortable but staying anyway. The rain lightens. He removes his tie, rolls his sleeves up. Locals whisper, Is that really Han Sang-ook? He tastes another bite, this time slower, like he's studying her through the flavor. Later, in his car, his driver glances at him through the rearview mirror. Sir, you seem different. Different? You smiled. Twice. Sang-ook looks out the window at the glowing red canopy disappearing behind them. He touches his lips unconsciously. A faint smile lingers. Don't tell anyone. Meanwhile, at the stall, Nicky locks up, muttering to herself. Men like that are trouble in a pressed shirt. But she pauses, eyes falling on the empty stool he'd sat on, still slightly damp from the rain. And for the first time, she smiles too. Cliffhanger scene, HSG Group, next morning. Director Choi storms into the office with reports. CEO Han, the investors are demanding to know why you delayed demolition. Tell them I'm conducting an internal study. Study? On what? On the difference between progress and arrogance. Choi stares, baffled. As he leaves, Sang-ook glances at a takeout container on his desk. Her signature red sticker stamped across it. Seoul and Seoul. He opens it. The smell fills the office. He exhales, closes his eyes, and, for the first time in years, laughs softly. Late one afternoon. The sun dipped behind Seoul's skyline, leaving streaks of gold over the crowded Myeongdong street. The air buzzed with chatter and frying oil, the comforting soundtrack of small dreams surviving big cities. At Seoul and Seoul, Nicky Carter was not smiling. She stood behind her stall with her arms folded, watching two inspectors pack up their clipboards. They had come, measured, nodded, and left again. The same routine that told her the battle wasn't over. And then she saw him. Han Sang-ook, perfectly pressed, impossibly calm, walking toward her stall as if the street was his personal runway. "What are you doing here again?" she asked, snapping her tongs like a warning. "Inspection follow-up," he said smoothly. "Also, I'm hungry." "Oh, you're always hungry out for control." He ignored the jab. "You should be flattered. I don't usually visit the same place twice. I should call a doctor then, 'cause that sounds like a symptom of arrogance." The nearby vendors laughed. Nicky smirked, but he only adjusted his cufflink, unbothered. "You think I don't understand this business?" "You don't," she said. "You measure success by profit margins, not people's faces. That's called efficiency. That's called missing the whole point of food." She turned to the grill, flames licking beneath the pan. "You want to make a real decision about this street? Then stop hiding behind your boardroom. Work one night here. See how it feels?" He blinked. "Work? Yeah. Apron, orders, the whole spicy circus. You're joking." "I don't joke about food, sugar." The customers chuckled again. Sang-ook looked intrigued. He wasn't used to being challenged, certainly not by a woman in an apron with sauce on her sleeve and fire in her tone. "Fine," he said finally. "One night. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Bring humility, and wear something you can stain." She spun around before he could respond. As he left, his assistant whispered, horrified, "Sir, you can't seriously—" "Cancel my dinner meeting," Sang-ook said. "Apparently I'll be working." Next evening, 6 p.m., the alley buzzed with gossip. Phones out, cameras ready. The CEO of HSG Group in a food stall? No one believed it. Until he showed up. Sang-ook walked down the street in rolled up sleeves and casual slacks. His assistant trailed behind, carrying a small box. "Is that an apron?" "Imported Italian cotton," Sang-ook said dryly. "Lord help you," Nicky muttered, tying it around his waist. "You look like you're about to host a cooking TED Talk." "I am capable of following instructions." "Then listen close. Rule 1, don't touch anything shiny. Rule 2, smile. You look like you're about to fire someone." "I usually am." "Not tonight. Tonight you're just my rookie. The lesson begins." She handed him a spatula. "Start by flipping that beef. Gently. Like it's a first date." He turned the meat with surgical precision. "You're overthinking it," she groaned. "This isn't surgery. It's soul. You gotta feel the sizzle." "I don't feel food." "Well, that explains a lot." Laughter rippled from the growing crowd. Nicky leaned close, guiding his hand. "Listen to it. See that? It's talking to you. That sizzle says, 'Thank you for caring.'" For a moment, he actually smiled. "You're ridiculous." And you're rigid. Between us, we might make a normal person. Cue chaos. Orders piled up. Customers lined around the corner, filming every second. One customer shouted, "Mr. CEO, more sauce." Another yelled, "You missed the rice." Nicky barked orders like a general. "Stir fry station." "Keep that meat moving, rookie." "I'm doing it." "That's not stirring, that's pan abuse." He nearly dropped the spatula. She grabbed it, hands brushing his brief spark. Neither mentioned it. Then came the fire. Literally, a small flame shot up from the pan. Gasps echoed. Nicky snatched the towel, snuffed it out, and turned to him. "You trying to flambe Seoul, Mr. Fancy Pants?" "It was an accident." Accidents happen when pride forgets to listen. He froze. Her words hit deeper than she knew. Sang-ook awkwardly greeted customers, slowly learning to laugh. A kid drops change. He kneels to help. Cameras catch it. Nicky sneaks glances at him when he smiles, pretending she's not impressed. The crowd chants, "CEO Oppa! CEO Oppa!" He burns a batch of meat. She tastes it anyway and says, "It's awful, but I'm proud of you." Later that night, they sat on overturned crates, exhausted. The stall glowed with soft yellow light, surrounded by the smell of roasted garlic and laughter fading down the street. "You survived," she said. "Barely. Now you know what real work tastes like." "Bitter," he said dryly. "Nah," she smiled. "That's just humility. Acquired taste." He chuckled. A quiet, genuine sound that surprised even him. "You make chaos feel manageable. You make perfection look exhausting." For a brief moment, their eyes met, the kind of silence that hums with something unnamed. Later that night, at a nearby cafe, a university student uploaded a short video. "Yo, the CEO of HSG Group just worked at a bulgogi stall. Look at this." Clips rolled, Sang-ook in an apron, wiping sweat, laughing awkwardly, Nicky teasing him mercilessly. By midnight, the clip hit 2 million views. Trending tag, #CEO in an apron. Top comment, "He looks more human than ever." In his penthouse, Sang-ook watched the video alone. For once, he didn't look annoyed. He actually smiled. Slow, private, unguarded. His phone buzzed Director Choi. "Sir, you've gone viral. The board demands an explanation." Sang-ook ignored it, still watching Nicky in the video, laughing, fearless, alive. He whispered almost to himself, "Joy and imperfection," then leaned back, still smiling. The morning sunlight spilled across Seoul like liquid gold. Nicky Carter was already awake, flipping meat and humming softly, her stall alive with sizzles and chatter. A shadow fell over the counter, tall and familiar. She didn't need to look up. "You again," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "If you're here for another shift, you better bring burn insurance." Sang-ook didn't flinch. "No, I'm here with an offer." She raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like trouble." "My company's hosting an investor dinner tomorrow. I want you to cater." The spatula froze midair. She turned to him slowly. "You want me to cook for the people who tried to shut me down?" "They respect results. You'll show them what the street really tastes like." Nicky studied his face, unreadable as always, but something softer hid beneath that precision. "You sure about this? 'Cause I'm not the kind of woman who blends in with your gold forks and porcelain plates." "That's the point." The next day felt like boot camp. Nicky borrowed a friend's kitchen, preparing trays of Seoul and Seoul fusion dishes, bulgogi sliders with sweet potato buns, kimchi hush puppies, gochujang honey ribs, and collard green mandu. Each one told a story, a bridge between the South she came from and the Seoul she'd learned to love. When it was time to dress, she didn't hide. Her outfit was bold, a fitted black jumpsuit with gold embroidery, curls styled high, confidence radiant. Hee-jin, her assistant, gasped when she saw her. "Uni, you look like you're about to conquer Wall Street." Nicky winked. "Baby, I'm about to conquer Seoul Street. One bite at a time." HSG Group's rooftop ballroom glittered like another world. Crystal chandeliers, glass walls revealing the city skyline, a live quartet playing soft jazz. The crowd was powerful and polished. Nicky exhaled slowly as she wheeled her dishes in, earning curious stares. "Who's the caterer?" one investor asked. Another tilted his head. "Looks unconventional." At the center of the room stood Sang-ook, composed as ever in a navy tuxedo, tie perfectly aligned. When he saw her enter, something in his expression shifted. Warmth flickered where coldness used to live. He turned to his assistant. "Make sure her station has the spotlight." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, that's usually reserved for—" "Do it." Minutes later, the first guests approached Nicky's table. She greeted them with her trademark grin. "Good evening. Welcome to Seoul and Seoul. Tonight's flavor forecast: bold, unapologetic, and possibly addictive." Laughter rippled across the room. She served each dish personally, telling the story behind it. Her father, her journey, her dream of blending two cultures through food. The room, once skeptical, leaned in. Investors who had barely cracked a smile before were laughing. Her humor disarmed them. Her food enchanted them. Across the room, Sang-ook watched, his expression unreadable, but his hand curled slightly at his side, as if fighting the instinct to walk over and stand beside her. In the corner of the ballroom stood Min Seo, elegant, calculating, her lips curved in a smirk. Once a board member and his ex-fiancé, she'd built her life on appearances. Now, watching Sang-ook glance at Nicky with something dangerously close to admiration, her jealousy burned. She turned to her assistant. "She doesn't belong here. Look at her, loud, foreign, unsophisticated. Let's see how long the charm lasts." Snapping her fingers, she signaled the stage manager. The MC stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're adding a little fun tonight. A live culinary critique. Guests will vote for the night's best dish." It hadn't been in the program. Sang-ook's brow furrowed. "Who approved this?" he asked Director Choi. "Min Seo's idea," Choi said. "The investors love competitions." Across the room, Nicky heard the announcement. Her jaw set. "So this is how it's gonna be, huh?" she muttered. Chefs from luxury restaurants presented first. Delicate amuse-bouches, edible gold flakes, truffle-infused sauces. Then came Nicky. Her station smelled of spice and warmth. No elegance, just soul. "Mine doesn't need gold dust," she said with a smile. "It's already priceless." There were chuckles, a few frowns, but as she served with confidence, her southern charm melting even the iciest critics, something shifted. When the votes came in, gasps followed. She won. By a wide margin, even the judges couldn't deny the taste that refused to bow. Min Seo's smile froze. Her plan had failed. And in the far corner of the ballroom, Sang-ook finally allowed himself to smile. Later, Nicky stepped into the hallway to breathe. The city lights sparkled below. For once, she felt she belonged. Then she heard them. Min Seo and a few board members talking near the restroom entrance. "It was clever of Han Sang-ook to bring her," one board member said. "Makes him look charitable." "Charitable?" Min Seo scoffed. "She's entertainment. A novelty from the street. Did you hear her accent? I half expected her to sing gospel over the grill." Laughter. Ugly, polite, poisonous laughter. Nicky froze behind the corner. The words burned hotter than any stove. Her hand tightened around her serving tray until the metal bent slightly. She blinked fast, refusing to let tears fall. Not tonight, she whispered. Not in front of them. But before she could step away, another voice cut through the noise. Deep, steady, unmistakable. Enough. The hallway went silent. Sang-ook stood there, expression calm, but eyes sharp as knives. You mock her accent, yet you can't match her courage, he said evenly. You call her entertainment, yet she earned more respect in 1 hour than some of you have in your entire careers. Min-seo's composure cracked. Sang-ook, I was only disrespecting a guest in my company's name. Congratulations. He turned his gaze on the others. The next time you want to belittle someone, make sure you've achieved half of what she has, without a last name or a family fortune to prop you up. The board members shrank back, speechless. Nicky stood frozen, still hidden behind the wall. But she had heard everything. Her throat tightened. For the first time, someone had stood for her, not out of pity, but pride. She exhaled shakily, hand over her heart, the same heart that had sworn never to care what a man in a suit thought. Now it was beating too fast. When Sang-ook turned the corner, he found her standing there, quiet, eyes glistening. You heard, he said. Every word. Good, he said, because I meant them. They stood in silence, the city lights spilling across their faces like a benediction. You didn't have to defend me. Yes, I did. For once, the distance between CEO and street vendor didn't exist. Just two souls, one learning humility, the other learning worth. Guess you're not as heartless as you look. Guess you're not as impossible as I thought. A slow smile curved her lips. Careful, Mr. CEO. You might start liking the chaos. Too late. The orchestra's music floated from the ballroom, mingling with the hum of Seoul's skyline. Inside the ballroom, someone snapped a photo of Sang-ook, standing close to Nicky, both unaware. Within hours, the picture would spread across the media under one headline: HSG's cold CEO defends street vendor at private gala. Who is she? Seoul morning sunlight over Myeongdong. The smell of sizzling bulgogi filled the narrow street. A camera crew weaved through the crowd, mics raised, faces lit with excitement. The producers of Taste of Seoul, one of Korea's top culinary shows, had chosen to feature Seoul and Seoul after a viral clip of a certain CEO in an apron made waves across social media. Nicky Carter had no idea that her life was about to change. Again. Nicky adjusted her red apron, palms sweaty but spirit steady. The host, a polished woman in heels, smiled as the cameras began to roll. Today on Taste of Seoul, we meet Nicky Carter, the woman behind the street sensation, Seoul and Seoul. Nicky, your bulgogi has taken social media by storm. Tell us, what inspired you? Nicky smiled. Honestly, a man who didn't know the difference between soy sauce and common sense. The crew laughed. Oh, tell us more, the host encouraged. My father? He taught me that food is love that doesn't need words. But a certain man did remind me of that truth when I almost forgot it. The host chuckled. Oh? Someone special? Let's just say a CEO once stopped by my stall, completely out of his element, and somehow reminded me why I started cooking in the first place. He didn't inspire the dream. He just reminded me it was still alive, Nicky said. Host, you're referring to Han Sang-ook of HSG Group, correct? That's right, she replied. Would you say he's a friend? The host asked. Nicky, teasing but honest. A complicated one. But he's someone who challenged me to keep believing in what I do. Her answer was honest and innocent, but in the hands of a hungry PR team. It would soon become a storm. At HSG headquarters, the PR department was in chaos. Screens flashed headlines, from boardroom to Bulgogi, CEO Han's secret muse. Love over lunch? Street vendor and tycoon spark dating. Rumors. Sang-ook stood silently in the middle of the boardroom, watching the footage play on a loop. His assistant whispered nervously, "Sir, our PR division is running with it. They're calling it a humanizing narrative. It's boosting public sympathy after the redevelopment backlash." Director Choi added, "It's working, sir. Your approval ratings are up 20%. Investors love the romantic CEO angle." "So you turned her into a headline," Sang-ook said quietly. "Into hope, sir." "People love a story," Choi replied. He said nothing, but his jaw tightened. By afternoon, the internet was ablaze. Nicky's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. "She's totally dating him," one comment read. "Street girl scores, CEO. Goals," another said. "He's out of her league," a third scoffed. Nicky slammed her phone onto the counter and exhaled sharply. Heejin peeked from behind the stall. "Uni, it's everywhere. They even photoshopped your faces into a wedding shoot. Great, just great. I wake up a small business owner and go to bed a PR stunt." She wiped her hands, grabbed her coat, and headed straight for the HSG tower. The lobby guards tried to stop her, but Sang-ook's assistant recognized her instantly. Moments later, she was in his office, dripping rain from her umbrella, fire in her eyes. "You let this happen," she said. "I didn't create the story," he replied, "but you didn't stop it either. My name's being dragged all over the internet while you're sitting up here collecting sympathy points." He stood, calm as ever. "It's temporary. The attention will fade. Temporary for you, permanent for me. I don't get to hide behind power, Mr. CEO. I'm the headline." Her voice cracked, not from anger but betrayal. He softened. "I didn't stop it because..." He hesitated, searching for words. "Because maybe I wanted it to be true." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the rain outside seemed to pause. Nicky's heart thudded. "You can't just say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I'm not a headline to you. Or anyone. I fought too hard to be more than someone's story." He stepped closer. Slowly. Deliberately. "You're not a story, Nicky. You're the reason mine changed." Her breath hitched. For a man who lived his whole life in control, he looked disarmed. Human. Thunder rolled outside. "You need to fix this. Tell them it's not true." "Do you want it not to be?" Her eyes flickered. Anger and confusion at war with something softer she refused to name. Before she could respond, lightning flashed across the glass wall behind him, followed by a crack of thunder. Rain began to pour, hard, relentless, drumming against the windows. "You're impossible. And you're unforgettable." She turned toward the door, then stopped when he said her name. Nicky. Her hand hovered near the handle. She didn't turn. "The next time the world calls it fake, let them. We'll know the truth." Something in his voice pulled her back. Their eyes met, and suddenly the distance between them vanished. He stepped closer, slow enough for her to stop him if she wanted to. She didn't. Raindrops streaked down the glass behind them, their reflections shimmering in the light. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. "Then why can't we stop?" His hand brushed her cheek, tentative, reverent. The tension between them was a held breath. Two hearts caught mid-confession. For a moment, time stilled. Her lips parted slightly, and he leaned in. Just then, the door burst open. "Sir! The reporters are outside. They saw her come in," his assistant shouted, panicked. Nicky jerked back, eyes wide. Reality crashed down like the rain outside. "I told you, I'm not your story." She turned and left, the door swinging shut behind her. Sang-ook stood frozen, hands still half raised in the air. The rain hammered the window like an echo of everything unsaid. He whispered under his breath, to no one and everyone. Then why does my heart keep rewriting it? Outside the HSG tower, Nicky walks into the pouring rain. No umbrella, no protection. Her expression caught between defiance and heartbreak. From above, through the glass, Sang-ook watches her disappear into the crowd, the city lights reflecting like tears he refuses to shed. Monday morning, the skyline glowed sharp and cold under a steel gray sky. Inside the glass tower of HSG Group, tension sat heavy in the boardroom like a storm waiting to break. Han Sang-ook stood at the head of the long table, hands clasped behind him, every eye fixed on him. Not with respect this time, but with curiosity and silent judgment. Director Choi cleared his throat and began. Mr. Han, we've reviewed the redevelopment portfolio. Investors are demanding progress. They want the Myeongdong project completed within the quarter. Another board member added, that includes demolition of all remaining food stalls, especially that one, Seoul and Seoul. The name dropped like a match into gasoline. Several murmurs followed. Director Kim leaned forward. It's becoming a distraction, sir. Public sympathy is shifting from our company to a street vendor. Choi nodded. And the gossip linking you to her isn't helping. We recommend ending the association immediately and moving forward with the luxury restaurant proposal. Sang-ook's expression didn't flicker, but his fingers tightened imperceptibly at his side. Director Kim pressed, Sir, your reputation as a decisive leader is why investors trust you. Don't let personal sentiment cloud your vision. A long silence followed. The clock ticked softly, the only sound in the room. Then Sang-ook spoke, his voice even but cutting through the air like a blade. Tell me, gentlemen, do any of you actually know what success tastes like? Confused glances exchanged across the table. Choi frowned. Excuse me? Sang-ook continued. You measure it in profit and power, but success is measured in purpose. That woman built something real, a business that connects people. Her stall feeds hundreds every week, and you want to replace that with imported marble and overpriced appetizers. Director Kim interjected, It's about image, sir. Then maybe our image needs changing, Sang-ook replied. A stunned hush fell. He stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. We claim to build communities. If we destroy one woman's livelihood for convenience, we become hypocrites, not builders. Choi tilted his head. Are you defending her out of principle or personal involvement? That question hung like poison in the air. Sang-ook met his gaze, unflinching. Both. Gasps rippled through the room. A few directors sat back, wide-eyed. Director Kim's voice tightened. You're risking your image, sir. Sang-ook didn't hesitate. Then let it burn. At least I'll know what I stood for. He turned, ending the meeting before anyone could argue further, outside the boardroom. Sang-ook walked down the corridor, pulse steady despite the storm brewing behind him. For the first time, he didn't care about damage control. He cared about truth. His assistant, Jae-min, followed anxiously. Sir, you just challenged half the board. They'll retaliate. Let them. I won't sacrifice integrity for comfort. And the woman? They'll make her a target. That stopped him. He exhaled slowly. Then I'll make sure she's protected. That same afternoon, Nicky was restocking meat at Seoul and Seoul when the crowd around her shifted. A few reporters with cameras appeared, snapping photos without warning. Miss Carter, is it true you're in a relationship with CEO Han? How much money has he invested in your stall? Nicky froze mid-step, heart pounding. He hasn't invested a dime. I built this with my own hands. But they didn't listen. Flashes exploded. She ducked inside the stall, locking the small gate. Hee-jin peeked out. Uni! They're everywhere. I know. Stay calm. Let me think. Then her phone buzzed. Sang-ook calling. You see what's happening out here? I do. I'm handling it. You're the reason it's happening. They think I'm some kind of charity project. His voice softened. I defended you today. I told them you matter more than image. She blinked. You did what? I told them the truth. A long pause followed. Rain began to fall again. Light, hesitant drops tapping against the awning. Nicky's voice dropped. You really are crazy, you know that. You keep reminding me. Hours later, the storm had cleared, but neither of them could sleep. Sang-ook stood by his office window, city lights flickering below. On his desk lay a single document, a proposal from Minseo for the Han Culinary Pavilion, a luxury restaurant to replace Nicky's stall. He didn't even open it. Instead, he picked up his phone and texted, You still awake? Minutes later, her reply lit the screen. You know I am. The internet won't let me rest. He smiled faintly. I'll fix it. Don't make promises you can't keep, Mr. CEO. I'm not promising the world, Nicky. Just your corner of it. A long pause. Then you better mean it. The next morning, sunlight filtered through Minseo's office windows. She scrolled through her phone, expression sharp. The gossip was spreading, but not fast enough. She opened a secret folder of photos, a collection taken weeks ago. Nicky laughing with Sang-ook near his car. Nicky carrying a gift bag out of HSG headquarters. One frame where he was touching her shoulder, mid-laugh. Taken out of context, they painted a damning picture. She forwarded them to a popular gossip outlet with a single caption, Street Girl or Strategist, the woman who turned HSG CEO into her personal investor. Within hours, the photos were everywhere. Headlines exploded, Gold Digger or Genius. CEO's pet project scandal rocks HSG. Nicky stood frozen in her stall, watching the news feed scroll across her phone. Her throat went dry. Uni, it's bad. They're calling you a manipulator. They don't even know me. A customer dropped by, looked awkward, then walked away without ordering. The crowd that once adored her began to thin. She blinked fast, holding back tears. Meanwhile, at HSG, Sang-ook burst into the PR department, phone in hand. Who leaked those photos? We don't know, sir. They came from an anonymous email. Find the source. Immediately. He turned, eyes like steel, and strode down the hall. Minseo stepped out of her office, feigning surprise. Terrible, isn't it? Such a scandal for the company. People are saying you were manipulated. He stopped cold. You did this. Prove it, she said, smiling too sweetly. You're blinded by her. You'd throw away your empire for a street vendor. How tragic. No, he said quietly. What's tragic is that you think empire is worth more than integrity. He walked away, leaving her standing in her own bitterness. That night, Nicky sat alone in her apartment, scrolling through the photos. Each one twisted reality, knew just enough to hurt. She opened the comments. She played him. Classic foreign gold digger. Guess love can be bought. Her hands trembled. She shut the phone off, tears finally falling. Outside, rain began again. Heavy this time, unrelenting. At that same moment, Sang-ook stood by his window, phone pressed to his ear. Trace the leak and call a press conference. Sir, are you sure? It could destroy your reputation. Then so be it. But I won't let them destroy hers. Lightning flashed across the skyline, Seoul gleaming like a battlefield. Two souls, both under fire, one drowning in rumor, the other ready to burn everything to pull her back into the light. Myeongdong was quiet in a way it had never been. The familiar crackle of meat on Nicky Carter's grill was gone. The bright red canopy of Seoul and Seoul hung half-collapsed, damp from overnight rain. She stood alone before the stall that had once smelled of laughter and spice. Reporters had finally stopped coming, but the damage lingered in whispers, in stares that slid over her like judgment. "Uni, please don't close it. People will remember the truth," Heejin pleaded beside her. "They already decided what's true," Nicky replied, her voice hollow. "Then let them talk," Heejin whispered. "They're not the ones whose name is printed next to Gold Digger," Nicky murmured, eyes fixed on the stall. She pulled the last cord loose, folded the banner, and pressed her palms flat against the counter one final time. Her whisper carried like a prayer. "Daddy, I tried." Across the river, Han Sang-ook stared at the empty stall from inside his car. Rain spattered the windshield, blurring his reflection with the ghost of an empty street. "She shut it down this morning," Jae-min said quietly from the passenger seat. "I told her I'd fix it," Sang-ook muttered. "Maybe that's what hurt her, sir." "She didn't want you to fix it," Jae-min answered gently. The remark struck harder than expected. Sang-ook dismissed the driver and stepped out into the rain, standing before the stall's skeleton like a mourner at a grave. He saw the small handwritten sign still taped to the side. "Closed for now. Thank you for every heartbeat you brought to this kitchen." "For now," he repeated under his breath. He realized, too late, that his silence had cost her faith. Not in him, but in herself. Pride, not lies, had built the wall between them. Days turned into a week. Every call went unanswered. Every address came up cold, until Jae-min dropped a file on his desk. "She signed up as a volunteer with Hope Hands Foundation," Jae-min reported. "They sent her to Busan for the coastal rebuilding project." "Busan? Small town outside the city. Flood damage. She's teaching cooking to displaced families." Sang-ook closed the folder and said, "Book me a train. Tonight." Sea breeze, salt, and sawdust filled the air. Between rows of temporary shelters, Nicky stood at a folding table surrounded by villagers and children, her laughter softer but still genuine. "All right, everyone. One bowl of rice, one heart of love. That's the recipe," she joked, earning a round of applause. Yet when she turned away to wipe her hands, the smile fell from her face. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She let it ring. She couldn't face Seoul again. Not him. Not yet. That night, the sky cracked open. Rain fell like a curtain. Nicky walked home from the community center, umbrella flipping uselessly in the wind. She ducked under a half-lit awning to wait it out, and froze. A lone figure stood at the end of the alley, soaked through, no umbrella, his usually perfect suit clinging to him in dark folds. Han Sang-ook. Her heart stumbled. "You've got to be kidding me," she said, blinking through the storm. "You don't answer calls," he said, his voice hoarse. "Take the hint." He took a slow step closer, water pooling around his shoes. "I had to see you." "For what? Another apology you don't mean?" "To tell you the one thing I should have said before everything fell apart." She folded her arms, trying to stay angry. "I'm listening." Rain drummed between them, relentless. His voice was quiet, stripped of the arrogance she'd once despised. "I'm not here to save you." He stepped closer. "I'm here to stand beside you." Her breath caught. The words hit deeper than any confession. He went on, rain running down his face like absolution. "You built something real when I'd forgotten how. You believed in people when I only believed in profit. You taught me that dignity doesn't need defense. It just needs truth. I can't undo what they said, but I won't let you fight alone anymore." She stared at him. This man she'd called heartless, now drenched, shaking, but utterly sincere. "Why would you risk everything for me?" she whispered. "Because somewhere between your fire and your faith, I remembered what a soul feels like." For a heartbeat they stood there, rain cascading around them, both trembling for different reasons. She took one slow step forward, then another, until the space between them vanished. He didn't touch her, not yet, but the air itself seemed to hum. "You're late, you know," she murmured. "Then I'll start now," he answered. The thunder rolled, the lights flickered, and everything unsaid hung thick as the storm. The next morning, Busan wakes to viral photos. Seoul's coldest CEO, standing in the rain beside a woman with an apron in her hand and forgiveness in her eyes. Neither of them cares. For the first time, they're finally standing on the same side. K. Evening on the coast, Busan's sea stretched wide and gray under a setting sun. The storm had passed, leaving salt on the wind and puddles glittering in the fading light. Inside the small volunteer dormitory kitchen, Nicky stood over a pot of stew. The walls were old, the lighting dim, yet the air felt warm again. She moved slowly, humming a gospel tune her father used to sing when he cooked Sunday dinner back in Atlanta. The door creaked open. "It smells like home, even when home's an ocean away." She glanced over her shoulder, already recognizing the voice. "You showing up uninvited again?" "Apparently, it's becoming a habit." He stepped in, wearing a plain white shirt and dark slacks. No suit, no armor, just him. "You were drenched yesterday, overdressed today. Balance, Mr. CEO. Maybe I'm learning." He took a seat at the narrow table while she ladled stew into 2 chipped bowls. They ate in silence at first. Comfortable, tentative. Outside, waves crashed against the rocks like a heartbeat trying to keep time. Nicky set her spoon down. The steam from the pot fogged her eyes as if the memories themselves were rising. "You wanted truth, right? Here it is. I'm listening." She twisted the chain around her neck, a small locket with a faded photo inside. "My dad was my everything. He used to say life was a recipe. If you mess up one ingredient, start over. Don't throw the whole meal away. When he got sick, I promised I'd open a restaurant that mixed our worlds together. Soul and soul started as a joke between us." Her voice faltered. "Then he passed, and I stopped cooking for a while. Lost my spark. I thought love could fill it. I was engaged back in Atlanta. He helped me build my first food truck, then emptied the account and ran off with my recipes, left me with debt and shame." Sang-ook looked at her, silent but present. "You know what it feels like to have everything you built stolen and still be blamed for it? That's why I came here. I figured if I was going to start over, I'd do it somewhere nobody knew my name. Until I ruined that anonymity. Until you walked in, yes." She met his gaze. There was no accusation in it now, just weary honesty. "I don't hate you, Sang-ook. I just don't trust that a man like you could ever understand what it's like to lose everything and keep going anyway." He leaned back, fingers tracing the rim of his bowl. "You're wrong. I do understand." She tilted her head. "Then explain it to me." For a long moment, only the sea answered. Then he spoke, slowly, carefully, as if the words were heavier than he'd expected. "My mother left when I was 10. My father was the empire everyone feared. He said love was a liability. Told me women were distractions designed to destroy great men. I believed him. I watched him ruin people in the name of control, including her. When she walked out, he made me promise I'd never let anyone get close enough to do the same. He laughed once, quietly, without humor. So I didn't. I built walls out of contracts and silence. They called me cold, efficient. It worked, until a woman selling bulgogi on a street corner called me stoneface and made me laugh in public." Her lips curved despite herself. You're still mad about that nickname? No. I think it saved me. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes searching hers. You made me hungry again, not for food, but for life. The words landed like truth breaking open. She felt something in her chest unclench, an ache she didn't know she'd been holding. You really mean that? Every syllable. Outside, the rain began again, gentle, rhythmic. The kitchen lights flickered. A single drop fell from the ceiling onto the table. Neither moved. You don't owe me redemption, Sang-ook. It's not redemption I'm after. It's honesty. You showed me who I could be when I stopped pretending the world is made of ledgers and walls. She reached across the table, fingers brushing his. His hand turned, catching hers mid-touch. Warm, steady. This doesn't make sense, you know. Maybe for once. We don't need it to. Silence, thick but peaceful. He lifted her hand slightly, thumb tracing the line of her wrist as if committing her to memory. So what now? Now we build something new, together. Even if the world doesn't approve. The sea outside roared like applause. Later, they walked along the pier behind the dorms, wind tugging at their clothes. Street lights reflected on the wet planks, and their footsteps echoed in sync. You know what my dad would say if he saw us right now? What's that? Don't overcook the blessing. He laughed, genuine, unguarded, and she joined him, their laughter carried away by the sea breeze. When they reached the end of the pier, he stopped and looked out over the dark water. You ever wonder why storms come before calm? Because maybe the sky needs to cry before it clears. He nodded slowly. Then maybe we finally survived ours. As they turned back toward the lights of Busan, Nicky slipped her hand into his without words. Neither noticed the photographer standing at the far end of the boardwalk, camera poised, ready to capture the image that would make tomorrow's headlines burn once again. The morning sun broke through Seoul's clouds, scattering gold across the wet streets. Nicky Carter stood beside what used to be her beloved stall, a hollow shell of rusted metal and faded paint. But today, it wasn't a grave. It was a beginning. You really don't have to be here, she said. Sang-ook, tightening his sleeves, replied, You rebuilt my humanity. Least I can do is help rebuild your kitchen. She chuckled, brushing a curl from her face. Mr. CEO mixing cement. Never thought I'd live to see the day. It's called diversification. The team of local volunteers laughed as they worked, passing wood, paint cans, and nails. Nicky climbed a stepladder to paint the new sign, Soul and Soul, its letters bold and gold against red. Sang-ook stood below, steadying the ladder. Be careful. You worry too much. You fall, the internet will never let me live it down. So this is about your reputation, not my safety. Both, in that order. She threw a dab of paint at him. It hit his shirt. The volunteers gasped. Oh no, Armani casualty, she exclaimed in mock horror. You'll pay for that. Good luck invoicing me. He picked up a brush and dabbed a streak of red paint on her cheek. Consider it even. Their laughter drew stares from the workers, half amused, half touched. The once cold CEO looked human, happy even. When they finally stepped back to admire the finished stall, Nicky wiped her hands on a rag and sighed. I miss this sound. The grill? No. The sound of something coming back to life. By sunset, the stall glowed again. Light strung overhead, flames flickering beneath the grill, laughter spilling out like music. Locals gathered, eager to see the woman whose name had survived scandal. Children tugged at her apron. Old vendors clapped her back. You see, Miss Nicky? Seoul doesn't forget the people who feed its heart, one vendor said. Sang-ook helped serve plates, His sleeves rolled to the elbow, every movement precise but relaxed. "Look at you," Nicky teased, "from mergers to marinades. Don't underestimate transferable skills. You're dangerous with a ladle, you know that?" "I've been told I'm dangerous in general." "Noted. I'll keep the fire extinguisher handy." Their banter melted into comfort, laughter that didn't need translation. At one point, a little boy approached, tugging at Sang-ook's hand. "Ajushi, are you her husband?" Startled, Sang-ook stammered. No, He's the intern, sweetheart," Nicky said with a grin. "Then marry her." "You already smile like her," exclaimed the boy. The crowd laughed. Nicky blushed. Sang-ook's eyes lingered on her a heartbeat longer than before. Later that night, the city lights glittered like fallen stars. The stall had closed for the day, the crowd long gone, but the warmth lingered. Sang-ook led Nicky to a nearby rooftop overlooking the ocean. Quiet, simple, breathtaking. A small table waited, draped in a plain linen cloth, 2 candles flickering in glass jars, and a single vase of wildflowers. "You did this?" she asked softly. "I had help, but the cooking was mine." She lifted a lid, perfectly grilled bulgogi, sprinkled with sesame and love. "You cooked this?" "Don't look so shocked." "I'm not shocked. I'm impressed and a little concerned." They sat across from each other, the sea breeze tousling her curls. "You really don't have to keep proving you're human, you know." "I'm not. I just wanted to remember what joy tastes like. With you." The candles wavered as she smiled, slow and soft. They ate quietly, trading stories between bites. He told her about the first time he ever cooked, burning instant noodles as a teenager after his mother left. She told him about selling cupcakes at school to pay for her father's medicine. When she laughed, he caught himself watching the way her eyes glowed in the candlelight. When he smiled, she realized she'd stopped being afraid to trust again. "You know what's funny," she said. "The first time I met you, I thought you were allergic to feelings." "I was. Then you infected me. Guess love's contagious, huh?" "If it is, I hope there's no cure." For a long moment, silence stretched. Comfortable, fragile. He reached across the table, brushing a crumb from her cheek. "You make the world feel smaller and safer. You make it feel big again, like maybe I haven't seen all of it yet." Their hands met halfway across the table. The flame between them flickered higher, as if blessing the moment. Later, Nicky leaned against the rooftop railing, the wind tugging playfully at her hair. Sang-ook joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. "It's strange, isn't it?" she murmured. "How peace feels scarier than chaos sometimes." "That's because we keep waiting for the price." "And you?" "I think I finally stopped counting." She looked at him then. Really looked. This was no longer the man she'd met under city rain, all pride and distance. This man was quieter, softer, alive. He reached for her hand again, but his phone buzzed. Once, twice, persistent. He sighed and checked the screen. The name froze him. Chairman Han, his father. He answered reluctantly, stepping aside. "Father." The voice on the other end was cold. "You've embarrassed this family enough. The board and I are done tolerating your games. You will announce your engagement to Min Seo by next month, or resign your position immediately." Sang-ook's pulse spiked. That's blackmail. That's legacy. You can't build empires with emotion. You either marry her or lose everything. The call ended. The night went still. He stood motionless, wind cutting against him like knives. Behind him, Nicky watched the change in his face, the way warmth drained into quiet dread. "What happened?" she asked. He turned to her, the candlelight behind him flickering like a warning. "The past," It just called back. My father's back in Seoul, and he's coming for everything that matters to me. Their eyes locked, fear, resolve, love, all colliding in the silence between them. The next morning, headlines explode. Chairman Han returns. HSG, air under pressure to restore family alliance. And beneath the surface of that world, built on money and power, one question hums like a heartbeat. Can love survive when legacy demands surrender? Seoul glinted beneath a curtain of haze, its skyline sharp against the colorless sky. From the highest floor of the HSG tower, the world below looked cold and unfamiliar. Han Sang-ook stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling glass, his reflection ghosted over the city, warped by the morning fog. He stared at himself, at the man wearing power like armor, and felt something strange twist in his chest. When had he started fearing his own reflection? His phone buzzed again. Chairman Han. The name pulsed across the screen like a threat. He didn't answer. Behind him, the door opened with the hush of someone confident they belonged. Min Seo's heels clicked across the marble, steady and sharp. Her voice came with no warmth. You should answer him. He doesn't take silence well. Sang-ook didn't turn. I'm used to that. You know what he wants, she continued. What the board wants. You could fix this entire mess with one announcement. One engagement. The rumors go away. The investors stay calm. You keep your position. A pause. Then he finally looked over his shoulder at her. And you get to be the perfect bride in the perfect headline. Min Seo's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. You could do worse. I already have, he said, his voice flat. I spent 35 years choosing obedience over peace. I won't do it again. Something in her shifted. A crack in the mask. Then you'll lose everything. His gaze was steady. Then maybe none of it was ever mine to begin with. He didn't wait for her reply. The silence he left behind was louder than her footsteps as he walked out. The afternoon came with rain. Not a violent storm, just a steady drizzle that soaked the city in gray. Nicky sat on the wooden step outside her newly rebuilt stall, watching drops gather in the grooves of the pavement. Her hands were still stained from prep, her apron streaked with sauce, but her thoughts were far from the kitchen. The news had broken hours ago. HSGHEIRGEIVENMARIGEDELINEORFORCEDTORESIGN. The words had played over and over again on the screen behind the register, but she'd stopped listening after the third loop. She heard the footsteps before she saw him. She didn't need to look up. She'd memorized that gait, the way his presence shifted the air. So, she murmured, still staring at the street. It's true. Sang-ook stepped beside her, his shirt darkened from the rain, eyes tired. It's true. And you're here, instead of the boardroom. Why? He sat beside her slowly, as if the bench might buckle under the weight of everything he wasn't saying. Because this street feels bigger than that tower. She let out a quiet sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. You're supposed to be the man with all the answers. I used to be, he said. Not anymore. They sat in silence, watching the puddles bloom across the sidewalk. My father said if I marry Min Seo, I keep everything. If I don't, he'll take it all. The company, the stocks, even my mother's properties. And what did you say? I told him I needed time. She turned to look at him then. His eyes were full, not of tears, but something worse, a kind of helpless searching. And what do you want? She asked. He didn't answer. Don't you dare, she whispered, her voice breaking. Don't you dare look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm the reason you'd give it all up. She rose to her feet, anger and grief tangled in her throat. You've worked too hard, fought too long. Don't throw your whole life away for me." He stood too, the rain falling now in earnest between them. "It's not throwing it away," he said, "if I finally get to choose it." "No," her voice trembled. "If you're going to choose something, choose freedom, not me." His chest rose and fell with uneven breath. "Freedom is you." She let out a soft, teary laugh. "Then you still don't understand it." Nicky stepped closer, reaching for his face with trembling hands. Her thumbs gently wiped raindrops from his skin, even though they kept falling. "Freedom," she said softly, "means you stop running from yourself. It means you go back to that boardroom. Not for me, not even for love, but for the man you want to become." He closed his eyes as she spoke, as if committing her voice to memory. "If you walk in there tomorrow," she whispered, "walk in as that man. And whatever happens after, I'll still be proud of you." Their eyes locked. Her words settled into his bones like a benediction. "You're asking me to walk away from everything," he said. She nodded, rain curling in her lashes. "No, I'm asking you to walk toward something." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, finally, he gave the smallest of nods, soft, steady. When he turned to leave, she didn't follow. She just watched him go, fading into the gray. "You always make it sound so simple," he called over his shoulder. She smiled sadly. "That's because the truth usually is." Night had fallen. The city glowed with lights and ambition. Inside the HSG boardroom, tension dripped like oil through the air. Chairman Han sat at the head, rigid as stone, while the directors murmured in uncertain waves. Then the door opened. Sang-ook walked in. No tie, his collar open. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like a man who had already walked through the fire. Chairman Han barely looked at him. "You look pathetic. I assume you've come to your senses." "No," Sang-ook replied, placing a folder on the table. "I've come to give you this." The board members leaned forward as the chairman opened it. Signed resignation papers. "You're resigning?" one of the directors stammered. Sang-ook's voice was calm, clear, final. "For the first time in my life, I'm choosing what's right, not what's expected." Chairman Han's hand slammed the table. "You ungrateful fool! You would throw away your inheritance for that street vendor?" "No," Sang-ook said, meeting his father's eyes for the first time in years. "I'm not walking away because of her. I'm walking away for me." The room fell silent. Even the air seemed to pause. "To those of you who stood by me," he continued, "thank you. But I've seen more integrity in one woman's food stall than in this entire tower." His gaze swept the table. "You don't need a son. You need a servant. I'm neither." And with that, he bowed, not in surrender, but in peace, and walked out. Outside, Seoul sparkled under the neon wash of rain-soaked pavement. Sang-ook stepped into the street. No car waiting, no umbrella, no entourage. For the first time, he felt the full weight of nothing, and it felt like peace. He pulled out his phone and typed a message with fingers still shaking. "You told me to choose freedom." "I did." He hit send. Across the city, in the dim glow of the Seoul and Seoul kitchen, Nicky stood wiping down the counter. Her phone buzzed. She checked it, breath caught in her throat. A single line. She smiled through the tears that came fast and full. She whispered into the quiet, half-laughing, "Then come home, Sang-ook." As Sang-ook disappeared into the city's pulse, the HSG logo gleamed high above, sterile, proud, untouched. But below it, something new was stirring. A man had left the tower behind, and in doing so, had finally stepped into his soul. Taos, before the sun rose, Seoul trembled. News alerts blazed across phone screens and digital billboards. Coffee shop TVs played the headlines on a loop. Boardroom whispers. Han Sang-ook resigns from HSG Group. Stocks plummet overnight. Chairman Han declares his son a disgrace to the family. The empire loses its heir. By mid-morning, Han Group's value had dropped by 30%. Conference calls devolved into shareholder panic. Emergency meetings were called in multiple time zones. Min Seo wept before cameras, a portrait of corporate tragedy. But Sang-ook? He had vanished. Far from the chaos, in a quiet apartment overlooking the Busan harbor, Sang-ook stood at the window, wrapped in stillness. The apartment wasn't his, just a borrowed corner of peace from one of the few friends who hadn't abandoned him. Outside, the city moved without him, uncaring and endless. He boiled water for coffee, then, in his daze, forgot the grounds. The kettle whistled like it was mocking him. He muttered under his breath, staring at the empty cup, "So this is what freedom costs." His phone vibrated again, then again. Unknown numbers, reporters, brokers, his father's lawyer. He powered the phone off and tossed it across the room. For a brief moment, silence settled around him like relief. But then it stayed. Too long, too heavy, too quiet. Back in Seoul, soul and soul opened. Smaller now, humble, but alive. Nicky wiped down the counter with practiced hands, tied her apron tight, and greeted her first customer with the same smile she'd worn before the storm hit. "You're really back?" someone asked with disbelief. She grinned, even though her heart was heavy. "Told y'all I don't stay down long." But the truth sat behind her ribs like a weight. She hadn't heard from Sang-ook since the night he walked away from his empire. She told herself not to worry. But every hour stretched like thread unraveling. Later that evening, after the crowd thinned, she pulled out her phone. A single message glowed on her screen. Unsent for 3 days. "If you ever need help, you know where to find me." Her thumb hovered. Then, without another thought, she pressed send. 3 days passed. Then, just as the sky slipped from orange to navy over Seoul's quiet streets, the bell above the stall jingled. Nicky looked up. There he was. No suit, no tie, just a man who had lost everything, except for the calm resolve in his eyes. He looked thinner, more tired, but something about him felt more whole than before, as if shedding everything had brought him back to himself. Without a word, she reached beneath the counter and handed him a bowl of hot noodles. "Eat first," she said. "Talk later." He sat at the small bench, took a slow bite. His eyes closed, not from flavor, but memory. "This feels like home." She smiled softly. "It's still yours, you know. The fire never went out, just dimmed a little." They didn't talk about the headlines or the company. Instead, they spoke of recipes and childhood pranks, of music, of nothing and everything. When he stood to leave, she tucked a folded envelope into his hand. "Rent money," she said. "Don't argue." He frowned, starting to protest. "Nicky, you once fed my dreams when I was starving. Let me feed your life now." He didn't argue, but he didn't let go of her hand either. Not until she gently pulled it away. The days passed. Sang-ook found work consulting for small restaurants, helping struggling owners with branding, menus, and expansion plans. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. He'd rise early, move through the day quietly, and each night end up back at Seoul and Seoul. Sometimes he washed dishes. Sometimes he wiped down tables. Mostly, he just stood by the grill, watching her laugh with customers, anchoring himself in the warmth. One night, as she scraped the grill clean, he asked, "Why do you still believe in me?" She didn't look up. "Because I saw the man beneath the headlines." "And who's that?" he asked quietly. Her voice was sure. A man learning to live for something real. The words landed in his chest deeper than forgiveness. He breathed them in like truth. Together, they drafted a plan, a business grant, a new logo, a mission, a dream neither of them could buy, only build. They called it the Seoul Project, a string of small, affordable restaurants that brought Seoul street food to underserved neighborhoods worldwide. "We'll start small," Nicky said. "One grill, 2 hands, and a dream that can't be bought." "You always make it sound easy," she smiled. "That's because love makes hard things simple." He didn't say anything, but the way he looked at her, like she was the blueprint for everything he'd ever needed, said enough. 2 months later, Seoul and Seoul 2.0 opened. It gleamed under string lights, its menu scribbled in colored chalk. The scent of fire-roasted gochujang and sesame oil danced in the air. Crowds returned. Lines formed. A local blogger stopped by, snapped a photo of the new team, Nicky flipping scallion pancakes, and beside her, a tall man wearing an apron that read, "Intern Forever." The post exploded. The fallen CEO rises again, this time with the soul. Praise poured in at first, then curiosity, then the inevitable scrutiny. The first article hit that night. Exclusive, Han Sang-ook, secretly living with the former street vendor girlfriend. Then came the avalanche. Inside the love story that cost a CEO his empire. From executive suites to food stalls, the billion-dollar fall. And just like that, the fire returned. But this time, the world wasn't hunting him. They were hunting her. Nicky sat in the back room, scrolling through comments. She trapped him again. He lost billions for that woman. Classic scam. Heejin burst through the back door, panic in her eyes. "Uni, they found the photos again. They're saying you never left him, that you used him all along." Nicky's jaw clenched. She didn't blink. "So the fire starts again," she whispered. Her hands trembled as she gripped the counter. "Every time I rise, they find a new way to burn me." Heejin's voice was fierce. "Then let them burn, Uni. You'll still be standing." But Nicky didn't answer. This time, her silence wasn't strength. It was fear. Across town, Sang-ook's phone buzzed nonstop. Outside his apartment, reporters waited, shouting his name, jamming microphones toward the building. He stared at the latest headline. Han Sang-ook's secret benefactor, the woman who never let go. His chest tightened. She had protected him. In silence, in sacrifice. Now the world was tearing her apart again. He grabbed his keys, breath short. Not this time. Not again. He pushed through the crowd outside the building, ignoring the flashbulbs and questions. The night air was thick with rain and shouts. In the distance, Seoul and Seoul glowed dimly in the storm. Still burning. Still standing. A camera flash froze the moment in time. The disgraced CEO sprinting through the storm, rain soaking his clothes, face carved in urgency. The caption beneath the image spread like wildfire. Love or liability? Han Sang-ook returns to the fire, and with that single frame, soaked, defiant, and running toward the only truth left, love against lightning. Morning light bled through Seoul's rain-heavy clouds like mercy after judgment. Inside the TV studio, Nicky Carter sat quietly in the makeup chair. Her hands trembled slightly, folded neatly in her lap. A young producer leaned in to clip a mic to her collar. Studio lights blazed overhead, too bright, too hot, and the whispers around her were louder than they should have been. "She's the one who cost him the company," someone murmured behind the curtain. "They're just using her for ratings," another whispered. Nicky heard it all, and yet she didn't flinch. Not this time. She had already survived worse fires. Ahead, The network's banner glowed across the monitor in bold blue letters. Live interview. The street vendor and the CEO scandal. Across the city, thousands tuned in. Some watched to mock. Some watched to understand. And in a small, quiet cafe by the water, Han Sang-ook sat alone, his eyes locked on the screen, breath still, watching her face fill the frame. The host offered a courteous smile, poised and practiced. "Ms. Carter, thank you for joining us," he began, tone perfectly neutral. "The public has followed your story closely, from street vendor to national sensation, and now, controversy. People are asking, who was the real Nicky Carter?" She exhaled slowly, her accent rich with warmth, her voice unapologetically grounded in truth. "I'm just a woman who loves cooking," she said. "A woman who lost everything twice and learned how to stand again." The host nodded, but his next question was a blade. "And Han Sang-ook? The man accused of helping you, then falling because of you. What is your relationship with him now?" The silence that followed was heavy. Nicky didn't blink. "You want to know about Han Sang-ook?" she said steadily. "Then let me tell you what kind of man he is." The studio quieted. Even the crew leaned forward. "He's the kind of man who traded silk ties for a ladle just to understand what hard work feels like. The kind who stood in the rain to protect a food stall the world thought was worthless. The kind who gave up his empire, not for a woman, but for his integrity." The host looked taken aback. "So you're saying he's not the villain the media painted him as?" A soft smile touched her lips. "Villains don't build shelters for orphans in Busan. They don't use their last savings to rebuild community kitchens under fake names. You call it scandal. I call it compassion." Behind the camera, a producer whispered urgently into a headset. "Check that. Is she referring to the Hangaram relief project we covered last month?" Nicky's voice only grew steadier. "Han Sang-ook didn't just change my life. He changed the city. When he lost his title, he found his humanity. Because of him, dozens of small vendors now have licenses, microloans, and hope. So if you still think he fell, maybe you're just looking from the wrong angle." A hush swept through the room, and across the city, something shifted. By the time the interview ended, social media wasn't on fire. It was glowing. "Maybe we judged them too quickly. Her grace is unreal. Bring back Han Sang-ook. Korea needs leaders like this." Clips of Nicky's voice played on loop, her quiet power rippling through timelines and headlines. The sincerity, the courage, the honesty. None of it could be bought, and none of it could be buried. In the cafe, Sang-ook's phone lit up again and again. Old friends, former investors, journalists, apologies flooding in from those who once vanished. Then a call from Jae-min. His voice cracked through the speaker. "Sir, she just redeemed you in front of the whole nation." But Sang-ook didn't smile. He stared at the screen for a moment, then whispered, "No. Jae-min." She reminded them who I was before I forgot. He set the phone down and stepped outside. The wind brushed gently against his face, and for the first time in months, the world didn't feel like a cage. That evening, just as Nicky began closing up the stall, she heard footsteps behind her. She didn't bother turning. "If you're another reporter," she said wearily, "I'm all out of polite answers." A familiar voice replied, low and soft, "Good thing I'm not here for answers." Her heart stopped mid-beat. She turned. There he was. A clean white shirt, hair damp, that quiet, half smile that had once both annoyed and undone her. "You saw the interview," she said. "I lived it." He stepped forward, the scent of grilled beef and rain lingering in the air between them. "You didn't have to do that," he said, "and you didn't have to give up everything for honesty." He met her gaze, and something in him softened. You made me believe in it again. A small laugh escaped her lips. Guess we're both guilty of loving impossible things. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the noise of the world vanished. Days later, the financial world buzzed with speculation. Anonymous buyer purchases major shares of HSG Group. Han family stock surges after silent acquisition. At Seoul, Nicky was slicing scallions when Jamin came bursting through the door, practically tripping over himself. Miss Nicky, he did it. He bought back part of HSG under a new name. Her knife stilled mid-cut. What? Before Jamin could answer, the door swung open behind her. Sang-ook stepped inside, holding a thin folder in one hand. His eyes were lit with a quiet mischief, like a boy who had just pulled off the impossible. I told you I'd start from scratch, he said, setting the folder on the counter. I wasn't lying. She opened it slowly. The documents inside were simple but striking. A new logo. A flame curled around a heartbeat. She read the name aloud. Seoul Corp? He nodded. Named after the only woman who ever taught me what it meant to build something with heart. Her eyes shimmered as she looked up at him. You really named a company after a food stall? No, he said gently. After its founder. Her hand pressed over her heart, the paper fluttering slightly in her fingers. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he said, his voice low. This time, it's not about empire or image. It's about purpose. She traced the flame with one fingertip. You're still that overachiever, huh? His grin deepened. Only when it comes to you. They stood in the warmth of the kitchen lights, surrounded by soy-glazed air and soft laughter. No longer a CEO and a vendor. No longer disgrace and scapegoat. Just two souls, still standing. That night, as the city calmed under moonlight, Nicky leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone. Her eyes caught on a headline. Former HSG CEO Han Sang-ook reclaims company shares through private venture. Seoul Corp aims to empower local businesses across Asia. Comments poured in like rain, from scandal to salvation. He learned what power is really for. A smile touched her lips. Then her breath caught. At the bottom of the article, one line stood out. Sources confirm the company's co-founder is an unlisted partner. Identity pending. Her eyes widened. No, she whispered, but her heart already knew. Across town, on a quiet balcony overlooking the harbor, Sang-ook typed a single message and hit send. Next time, the credit will have your name on it. She stared at her screen, heart full. For the first time, the world believed in him, but he still refused to let her be forgotten. The screen lingers on one glowing headline. Seoul Corp, built on heart, born from fire. And beneath it, a candid photo captured by a passing stranger. Nicky and Sang-ook laughing under the red lanterns of the Seoul, unaware of the camera, unaware that their redemption story had just begun again. Or Seoul's skyline shimmered, not because of its glass towers or LED billboards, but because something new had been built among them, something rooted in fire, flavored with grace. A modest glass building stood proudly in the heart of Gangnam. Across its entrance, a banner unfurled in clean, bold letters, Seoul Corp, where flavor meets purpose. The launch wasn't a spectacle, no paparazzi, no fanfare, just the warm aroma of street food curling through the air, laughter echoing between vendor stalls and the faces of real people, small business owners, local artisans, retired ajumas, offering rice cakes beside young app developers, tasting caramel chicken with reverence. At the heart of it all stood the very first Seoul and Seoul franchise, reborn from the ashes of Nicky's food stall, Its signature red canopy flapped gently in the breeze, hand-painted letters proudly crooked across the front, the imperfections more precious than perfection ever could be. Sang-ook stood beside her, not in armor, not in ego, just a man in a soft gray suit, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up like a vendor ready to chop scallions. Beside him, Nicky wore her signature red apron tied confidently over a tailored black dress. The contrast was striking. Her street, his boardroom, her roots, his reach. Together, they looked like revolution dressed as simplicity. A reporter broke the gentle rhythm of the day, stepping forward with a mic extended and a cautious question. "Mr. Han, after losing everything, why rebuild this way?" Sang-ook's smile came easily now. "Because this time," he said, glancing at Nicky, "I didn't rebuild alone." The cameras turned toward her just in time to catch the sound of her laughter. Full, golden, free. "We're proving," she said, wiping her hands on the apron, "that soul food can build empires too, just with a different kind of fire." Applause rippled through the crowd, but he wasn't watching the crowd. He was watching her, the strength in her voice, the pride in her eyes. She was everything he had spent a lifetime trying to become. Later that afternoon, sunlight spilled across the clean interior of the Seoul Corp offices. Warm woods and matte stone accented every corner, with no trace of the cold steel empire Sang-ook once ruled. Nicky stood silently in front of a polished glass wall, her fingers resting over a new plaque mounted there. Chief Culinary Seoul Officer, Nicky Carter. She read the title under her breath, the words tasting strange and sweet on her tongue. Chief Culinary, Seoul Officer. Her laugh was quiet, almost in disbelief. "Never thought I'd see those words together." From behind, his voice reached her. "It suits you," Sang-ook said. "You've always been the soul of everything I built." She turned to him, eyes soft, and tilted her head. "You're not bad yourself, Mr. CEO turned Chief of Redemption." "That's not an official title." "It should be." They both laughed, a sound made lighter by all the weight they'd carried to get here. Then her voice softened. "You know, when you lost everything, you didn't really lose it. You traded it for something else." He leaned against the glass beside her, watching the city stretch beyond the window. "For what?" "For purpose," she said gently. "For peace." He nodded. "Just once. Peace looks better on you than it ever did on me." "That's because you tried to buy it," she replied, nudging him. "I just cooked my way into it." He chuckled and turned toward her, eyes darker now, deeper. "When I was a child," he murmured, "my father told me love was weakness, that it distracted great men from legacy." She studied him for a long moment. "And now?" "Now I know," he whispered. "Legacy means nothing if you can't share it with someone who believes in the same heartbeat." Her throat tightened, eyes glistening. "You're sounding dangerously close to romantic, Mr. Han." "Only with you," he said. That evening, they climbed the familiar staircase to the rooftop, where Sang-ook had once been given an ultimatum that shattered him. But the skyline tonight wasn't cold or cruel. It glittered like a crown waiting to be claimed. Not by power, but by love. Fairy lights hung in soft loops across the railing. A small table sat in the center, set for two with bowls of bulgogi, golden chopsticks, a bottle of makgeolli, and the scent of sesame and honey lingering in the wind. They ate quietly at first, letting the peace stretch. The city below hummed like a lullaby. Nicky broke the silence. Her chopsticks paused midair. "You know, I still don't understand how you pulled it off. Buying back HSG stock, starting Seoul Corp, franchising my stall, all in 1 year?" Sang-ook leaned back in his chair, lips curled slightly. "You underestimate how powerful guilt can be as motivation." "And you," she said, eyes narrowing affectionately, underestimate how irresistible redemption is. He laughed then, freely, deeply. You always know how to turn my ruin into poetry. Maybe that's what love's supposed to do, she said softly. The last word barely made it out. He stilled, looked at her, really looked. The way her curls caught the candlelight, the bronze glow of her skin, the shine in her eyes that was never for the cameras, only ever for him. When you think about what's next, he asked, his voice quiet, what do you see? Next, she echoed. Now that we've rebuilt everything, he clarified. After the empire, after the redemption arc, she smiled at that. After the healing? Yes. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she let her gaze drift across the city, as if searching for the version of herself that had once slept in her food cart just to keep it from being stolen. Then she turned back to him, heart steady. You once told me, she said, you'd never marry love. The words stunned him, not because they were untrue, but because they were his own, hurled from a younger man who thought love was a leash instead of a light. She reached across the table, took his hand in hers. So don't marry love, Sang-ook, she said quietly. Marry purpose, and I'll meet you there. Everything went still. The wind, the lights, even the city held its breath. He blinked hard, voice catching in his throat. You realize that's the most dangerous proposal I've ever heard? She smiled, unblinking. Then say yes, like a man who's not afraid anymore. He stood slowly, walked around the table, and without another word, pulled her to him, arms wrapped tight, forehead pressed gently against hers. His voice cracked with emotion. I say yes to everything that has your fire in it. In the days that followed, Seoul bloomed with something new. At Seoul Station, the first official Seoul & Seoul branch opened, the line wrapping around the block before sunrise. The red canopy snapped proudly in the wind as Nicky, in her apron, stood beside Sang-ook to cut the ribbon. Confetti danced through the air. Laughter rose like incense. Children from the Busan orphanage cheered on a video call, waving handmade paper flags that read, Seoul Corp Family. Investors returned, but this time to shake hands with small vendors. Microloans were signed, licenses granted, and deep within the Seoul Corp kitchen, the two founders moved like rhythm and melody. Cooking, laughing, tasting, teasing, just existing. They said love would make me weak, he said. But what if love was the reason I finally became strong enough to change the world? That night, after the celebration, they returned to the rooftop once more. It had become a holy place, a scarred altar of all they had lost and all they had found. Seoul shimmered beneath them like 1,000 small promises. So, Mr. CEO of Seoul Corp, Nicky said, eyes dancing, what's the next move? He looked out over the skyline. Expansion. Business expansion? Maybe, he said, turning to her. Maybe family. Her laughter stopped short, caught between disbelief and breathlessness. From his pocket, he pulled a small velvet box. No diamond, just a simple gold band shaped like an infinite flame. You said marry purpose, he said. He opened the box. But you're my purpose, Nicky Carter. Her eyes filled so fast she couldn't speak. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed sharply in her pocket. She glanced at the screen, then froze. The headline burned bright, breaking. Chairman Han files lawsuit to block Seoul Corp trademark. Claims ownership of Han legacy assets. Her head lifted. The joy in her face twisted into disbelief. He stepped forward immediately, took her hand. Then it looks like the past just declared war. They stood together, framed by the flickering lights of Seoul, two souls who had built something the world said couldn't last, now being asked to defend it again. Behind them, the neon sign glowed faintly, Seoul Corp, built on heart. The city, the couple, the flame. And just beneath it all, a storm rising again. But this time, they were ready, together. The morning sun spilled over the Han River like melted gold, brushing the city in quiet reverence. For once, Seoul didn't roar or clamor. It hummed gently, like it too had paused to witness love finding its final home. Inside a private suite at the Shilla Hotel, Nicky Carter stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, the soft silk of her gown catching the light in delicate hues of rose and ivory. It wasn't just a dress, it was a story. A hanbok-inspired masterpiece with a southern soul, tailored with a high waistline wrapped in ivory ribbon, flowing down into petal-like layers of sheer organza. The joguri-style top was embroidered with magnolias and lotus blossoms, Georgia and Korea, stitched into unity with every loving thread. Pinned just above her heart was a small locket, its gold frame aged and warm. Inside, a photo of her father smiled up at her, his baseball cap tilted, his arms folded behind a grill. "I made it, Daddy," she whispered. "I told you I'd build something that fed people's souls." Her reflection smiled back at her. Not nervous, not questioning, just a woman finally at peace. Outside the Seoul Corp Cultural Hall, the air pulsed with color and music. Banners swayed between pillars, hand-painted with calligraphy and stitched emblems, magnolias interwoven with plum blossoms, 2 flames, 1 fire, inscribed in both Hangul and cursive script. The wedding aisle wasn't an aisle at all. It was a corridor of memory, a path lined with food stalls, each one representing a chapter in their journey. Busan-style tteokbokki next to mac and cheese, smoked brisket sizzling beside bulgogi skewers, collard greens folded into kimchi pancakes. The aroma alone felt like a hymn of joy. Guests filled every corner. Community vendors, orphans from Busan, waving tiny flags that read Team Nicky, former board members whose pride had softened into humility, and neighbors who remembered when she sold soul bowls out of a hand-painted cart. Heejin adjusted her headset with military precision. Cue the music. Aunt May's peach cobbler ready, Kim's bulgogi sizzling. Let's feed these people into paradise. Under a minimalist arch, wrapped in crimson silk and magnolia branches, Han Sang-ook stood still, hands folded, waiting. He wore a traditional hanbok, cream-toned with charcoal gray trim. No tie, no armor, just a man who had finally shed everything false, standing in the fullness of who he had become. Behind him, Jae-min leaned close, whispering, "You nervous, boss?" Sang-ook didn't blink. "Boss? Not anymore. After today, she outranks me." A ripple of laughter moved through the small crowd, but his eyes never moved from the pathway ahead. His heart was steady, but his breath betrayed him. Because this moment, this day, wasn't about headlines or legacy anymore. It was about choosing love out loud. Music floated into the courtyard, a haunting duet of amazing grace and Ararong, played on violin and geageum. The first few notes curled like incense through the trees. Then she stepped out, Nicky Carter, radiant, barefoot in silk, her bouquet a blend of jasmine, magnolias, and baby's breath. She walked with elegance, but more than that, with truth. Each step forward echoed every hardship she'd endured and every fire she'd risen from. Gasps spread through the crowd. Even some of the former executives blinked rapidly, suddenly thankful for their handkerchiefs. Sang-ook forgot to breathe. And when she reached him, she didn't falter. Her voice was quiet, but certain. "You're staring," she said, lips curved. His voice cracked. "I've been staring since the first day I saw you." She raised an eyebrow. "You're welcome," he smiled. You're the flavor I never knew I needed." And just like that, the last threads of tension unraveled. Her laugh was soft and sweet, and the city seemed to exhale with her. The officiant was an old pastor, Pastor Lee, who had once eaten her bulgogi every Sunday after church. He smiled as he looked out over the crowd. Two people who began with misunderstanding now stand in unity. From the fire of the grill and the fire of trial, they have found a love that feeds not just the stomach, but the soul. He turned to Sang-ook. "Do you, Han Sang-ook, promise to love her with the same courage you used to build this dream?" "I do," Sang-ook said, without hesitation. "And do you, Nicky Carter," the pastor asked, turning toward her, "promise to keep teaching him the difference between soy sauce and common sense?" Laughter rippled through the courtyard as tears sparkled in her eyes. "I do," she replied, voice trembling with joy, "every single day." As they exchanged rings, Sang-ook's fingers trembled. His voice was raw. "This isn't just a ring," he whispered. "It's every second I thought I'd never deserve you." Nicky held his hand and leaned close. "Then wear it like grace, not guilt." He kissed her then, softly, reverently, not to impress, not to prove, just to honor the moment. From somewhere in the back, a voice yelled, "Finally!" The crowd erupted in cheers. Under golden lights strung between trees and columns, long wooden tables stretched across the courtyard like a festival dream. Plates of food arrived like gifts: glazed fried chicken with gochujang honey, cornbread infused with sesame oil, bibimbap, built on sweet potatoes and smoked paprika. Nicky moved from table to table, laughing with the guests, spooning extra cobbler onto plates like it was a Sunday barbecue. Sang-ook joined her with his sleeves rolled up and a smudge of flour on his cheek. He handed a bowl to one of the Busan orphans, then turned toward her. "You're really going to ruin that hanbok with cobbler stains." She tapped his chest gently. "You already wear them." "Right here." They danced barefoot to a jazz-infused rendition of "Fly Me to the Moon," led by a hegum and saxophone duo. The blend of cultures, like everything else today, was effortless. As the music swelled, he spun her gently, then pulled her close. "You made me believe in a life I didn't know how to imagine," he whispered. She leaned into him. "You just needed the right seasoning." As the sky turned lavender, Jae-min clinked his glass and stood atop a bench, grinning. To the couple who turned scandal into soul food and failure into faith. The crowd roared. Fireworks burst over the Han River in synchronized explosions of red and gold, reflecting in the water like prayers written in light. Sang-ook wrapped an arm around Nicky and looked down at her. "Do you remember what you said the night I almost lost everything?" She tilted her head. "Which night?" "You told me to choose freedom, not you." A smile tugged at her lips. "And you chose both." "I did," he said, voice thick with emotion, "and I'll keep choosing them. Every day, for the rest of my life." Much later, when the music had faded and the last guest had drifted away, they stood on the pier together, husband and wife beneath a canopy of stars. Dozens of lanterns floated over the Han River, each carrying handwritten wishes from the children. Nicky's read, "For the next generation, may love always taste like hope." Sang-ook wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her gently closer. "We really did it, huh?" she murmured. He smiled against her temple. "No, we're just getting started." But then, a car door slammed in the distance. Flashbulbs burst like miniature lightning bolts across the pier. Reporters. They'd been found. The first voice rose above the others. "Mr. Han, what will you do about your father's lawsuit?" Nicky tensed beside him, her fingers tightening around his. He looked straight into the cameras, gaze unwavering. I'll protect what we built, he said, not as his son, but as her husband. Behind them, the lanterns lit the river like floating flames. The fireworks continued above, louder now, as if the sky itself knew that joy and war sometimes arrive hand in hand. Sang-ook pressed a kiss to Nicky's forehead as lanterns float above them. Her eyes close. His hand rests on her back. The river reflects every flicker of light and fire, until only one line remains. Built from fire, sustained by Seoul. 2 years later, the Seoul skyline glimmered beneath the early blush of dawn, brushed in hues of gold and promise. The city had changed in those 2 years, its pace quicker, its skyline taller, but so had they. The new Seoul Corp global headquarters rose from the heart of the city, not a tower of steel and dominance, but a structure of warmth and glass, etched with vision. On one polished wall near the entrance, in bold and graceful lettering, a mural stretched high above the lobby, built from fire, sustained by Seoul. Below, the courtyard overflowed with laughter and soft music. Lanterns swayed above a gathering of employees and partners from over 15 countries. They had come for the launch of the newest Seoul and Seoul branch. This one built in partnership with refugee-led food collectives across Asia and Africa. What had begun as one woman's street cart in a back alley now stretched from Seoul to Brooklyn, Nairobi to New Orleans, Busan to Soweto. Each location bore a crimson awning. Each menu was handwritten in both Hangul and English, and every single employee earned not just a fair wage, but dignity. Nicky Carter Han stood on a small stage, her curls pinned up with magnolia-shaped clips. She wore a flowing cream dress, cinched at the waist with a crimson hanbok ribbon. Her posture was calm. Her spirit was grounded. When she smiled, the crowd grew still. 2 years ago, she said into the mic, we promised to feed souls, not just stomachs. Today, that promise feeds over 3 million families around the world. So this, she looked across the sea of faces. This isn't our success, it's yours. The applause thundered across the courtyard. Camera shutters clicked and lights flashed, but her gaze sought only one face in the front row. The one man whose presence steadied her more than applause ever could. Han Sang-ook smiled back. No longer the hard-edged CEO who once commanded boardrooms with ice in his voice, but the man who had laid everything down and rebuilt his life with love. That afternoon, they sat at a booth in the new flagship restaurant, a space infused with Southern warmth and Korean elegance. Wooden beams arched over them like open arms. Jazz hummed gently from hidden speakers. The scent of caramelized soy, smoked peach glaze, and fresh herbs wrapped the room in comfort. Across the walls hung large framed photographs tracing the Seoul and Seoul journey. One showed Nicky grilling bulgogi under a stormy Seoul sky. Another captured Sang-ook kneeling beside children, handing out hot meals. A third, their wedding night under strings of lanterns, forever frozen in golden light. Others showcased teams teaching single mothers to manage their own stalls, orphans now smiling in chef coats, and street vendors turned franchise owners. Sang-ook leaned back in his seat, arms resting behind his head as he smiled at her. You've turned Seoul into your kitchen. Nicky arched a brow. Correction. Our kitchen. You just do the spreadsheets. He chuckled. I'll accept that. You make dreams edible. I just measure the heat. Their laughter was soft, natural, laughter born from wounds that had healed, from trust earned in fire. Moments later, a group of nervous teenagers entered. They were trainees in the Seoul Corp Youth Program, all of them clutching notebooks and aprons, their eyes wide with admiration. One stepped forward, voice trembling. Mr. Han, Ms. Nicky, how did you know this would work? Nicky's expression softened. She glanced at Sang-ook. "We didn't," she said honestly. "We just knew who we wanted to serve." Sang-ook nodded. "And when your purpose is bigger than your fear, it works. Maybe not right away, but it works." The students scribbled furiously. Another girl, barely 18, raised her hand. "So, are you two still in love after all this business?" Laughter swept through the room. Sang-ook turned to his wife, that boyish spark in his eyes. "Every day," he said, voice lowered just enough to hush the room, more dangerously than before. That evening, they stepped into a small youth center tucked inside a modest Hongdae building. It was far from glamorous. Whiteboards, folding chairs, and paper cups filled with instant coffee. But it pulsed with something more valuable than luxury. Hope. Sang-ook picked up a marker and wrote the opening line of his session on the board in bold letters. "Profit means nothing if people are your collateral." He faced the students, his voice clear. "When I was your age, I thought feelings made men weak." He paused. "I was wrong. They make men accountable." They didn't blink. Not because of who he was, but because of how he said it. Not from behind a podium or an empire, but beside them. He nodded toward the woman beside him. Nicky was already drawing a recipe diagram. Spices mapped like family trees, instructions sketched like blueprints. "And accountability," she added, "tastes like truth. You can't fake either one for long." There was a ripple of laughter. She kept sketching, curls falling over her shoulder. He watched her, a quiet awe in his chest. She never taught from theory, only from testimony. And that made all the difference. Later, they strolled hand in hand through a night market, neon signs flickering around them like fireflies in a digital forest. The scent of honey bread, fish cake broth, and caramelized sugar swirled through the alleyways. Kids waved and called out, "Mr. and Mrs. Seoul Corp." Nicky leaned into him, laughing. "You've officially been adopted by street vendors everywhere." Sang-ook tilted his head. "Then I've finally joined the right dynasty." At one stall, an Ajuma paused mid-sale and gasped. "You," she said, pointing at Nicky. "The Bulgogi Queen. You changed my son's life. He works for you now." Nicky stepped closer, eyes shining. "Then that's the real empire right there." The woman pushed 2 skewers into their hands and refused payment. "For good fortune," she said, "and long love." They sat on a nearby bench, lanterns swinging gently above. "You ever miss it?" Nicky asked. "The boardrooms? The titles?" He looked around them. Vendors chatting, toddlers chasing bubbles, jazz music blending with food sizzling in woks. "No," he said simply. "Those rooms were full of noise." He gestured around them. This is music." Back in their apartment, the city glowing beyond the windows, Nicky placed her father's framed photo on the kitchen counter. The same photo she had pinned to her heart the day she married. The sizzle of meat began again, and laughter echoed softly. Their kitchen was lived in. Spice jars labeled in 3 languages. Aprons hung beside a calendar filled with community events. Framed recipes decorated the walls. Dried herbs dangled from the ceiling like prayer strings. Sang-ook stood at the grill, sleeves rolled, apron crooked. "You still can't cut onions right," Nicky said, slicing beside him. He flashed a smirk. "I closed billion-dollar deals once. That should count for something." "This isn't a merger. This is dinner." He leaned in, his tone low. "Dinner's more important." They worked side by side, stirring, tasting, seasoning. She flicked a bit of flour on his cheek, and he retaliated with a dab of sauce on hers. At one point, she looked at him, flour dusting her lashes, her hand warm in his. "Still think feelings make men weak?" He shook his head slowly, lips brushing the back of her hand. "No," he whispered. "They make kings human." Her eyes glistened. They turned back to the grill, the scent of caramelized soy and sweet smoke rising between them. They didn't need fanfare or declarations. They had each other. And that was a legacy enough. Their hands touched in passing. Their shoulders leaned into one another. Beyond the glass, Seoul pulsed with light and life. But inside their home, there was only warmth. Two worlds, Southern and Korean, broken past and bold future, now fused like flavor in the same dish. Balanced, seasoned, whole. Many years later, Busan, morning. The sea shimmered beneath a gentle morning light, calm and endless, as if heaven itself had exhaled peace. Seagulls dipped in the air above, calling to one another as they circled the quiet coast. A young girl walked along the worn pier, her steps slow but steady. Her curls were tied up in a red ribbon, and a well-loved notebook was tucked tightly beneath her arm. She paused in front of a small food stall, its painted sign still vibrant despite the years. Seoul and Seoul. Golden script glinted softly in the sun. Inside the stall, an elderly ajumma flipped sizzling bulgogi on the same steel grill that had once sparked a revolution of flavors and purpose. When the girl approached the counter, the woman glanced up and smiled immediately, as if she recognized something beyond the face in front of her. "You must be her daughter," the woman said, voice thick with memory. The girl grinned wide. "Yes, ma'am. Hana Han." A slow nod followed. "Your mother changed this whole street. Your father, too. He used to come by once a year during Chuseok and make every vendor take business lessons. Right between the lunch rush." Hana giggled. "That sounds exactly like him." She placed her notebook gently on the counter and opened it. The pages were filled with colorful sketches, notes in 2 languages, and recipes shaped by imagination and legacy. "My mom said this was her very first recipe," Hana said. "She called it the fire that started everything." The ajumma leaned over the notebook, her fingers tracing the familiar strokes of a handwritten note. Aged, elegant, and still full of warmth. Bulgogi marinade, 3 parts faith, 2 parts laughter, a dash of grace, and enough love to feed the world. A chuckle escaped the older woman, her eyes glistening now. "Your mother always cooked with her heart," she whispered, "and your father, he made sure it reached every corner of the world." Hana turned toward the stall's sign again. Just beneath the name, a brass plaque gleamed in the morning sun. Founded by Nicky Carter Han and Han Sang-ook, for all who believe in second chances. The smell of grilled soy and honey lifted into the air, carried by the breeze. Hana closed her eyes for a moment, letting it wash over her. She could almost hear them, her parents, laughing somewhere in the scent, their voices woven into the wind, the sizzle of the pan, and the heartbeat of the street. "You built something eternal, Mom," she whispered. "Not just a restaurant, a heartbeat." She picked up her pen and added one final line beneath the old recipe. "Next generation, add one more ingredient, courage." Seoul. That same evening. The Seoul Corp rooftop was quiet that night, lit only by soft garden lights and the flicker of the city below. Seoul pulsed like starlight beneath them, alive, full, and breathing. Nicky stood with her arms folded over the rail, her cream scarf billowing gently in the wind. The years had settled gracefully across her, silver threaded through her curls, wisdom etched gently around her eyes, but her spirit was untouched. "She called," she said, turning slightly. Sang-ook stood beside her, hands in his pockets, his stance relaxed. "She's in Busan?" Nicky nodded. "At the stall." He chuckled. eyes crinkling. The stall. Let me guess. Rewriting your recipe? She said mine was too poetic, Nicky said with a mock glare. Too much metaphor, not enough measurements. Sang-ook leaned his shoulder against hers. My daughter rewriting your recipe. I should warn the culinary world. Don't you dare, she replied, nudging him. That's how legacy works. We leave the fire burning. They decide what to cook. He slipped an arm around her shoulders, the way he had for years now. Not out of habit, but reverence. She's got your fire, he murmured, and your heart. They stood together for a while, silent as the skyline shimmered around them. Music floated up faintly from a nearby Seoul and Seoul branch. Laughter from the streets below curled through the air like incense, the hum of buses, street vendors, dreams in motion. This was their symphony now. Then, in a voice soft and familiar, Nicky asked what she always asked in moments like this. Still think feelings make men weak? He didn't answer right away. He just pulled her closer and smiled like he always did. With certainty, not theory. No, he said at last. They make kings human. She laughed softly, resting her head on his shoulder. Seoul, inside one small restaurant window, a framed photo hung above the register. It showed Nicky and Sang-ook on their wedding day beneath a canopy of lanterns, holding hands with their foreheads pressed together, joy wrapped around them like breath. Beneath the photo were simple words, etched in gold: love, purpose, soul, forever seasoned. And just below that, freshly inked in Hannah's handwriting, to my parents, thank you for feeding the world with your hearts. The end. This story isn't just a romance. It's a reminder that dignity has flavor, and love, real love, leaves a legacy. Tell us in the comments, which scene stirred your soul the most? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable AMBW dramas. Until next time, keep feeding hearts, not just stomachs.